Please, sit it.
Sorry.
Are you Colonel?
Yeah, fine, thank you.
Fine?
Yeah, very well.
So it's a mixed gathering, huh?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Some other people were also planned to come, but this morning they couldn't come. So they have got a lot of questions.
Please start.
First is Mr. Ahad Bannu, then Mr. Kalim Christopher, and Mr. Kalon, all known to Huzur. And please start the question.
Assalamu alaikum. When we are discussing with our atheist friends,
Introduce yourself, please.
oh sorry, my name is Ahad Bannu. When we are discussing with our atheist friends, we want to be able to talk to them about God's and His nature. What is the best way to actually describe the nature of God to them?
The best way is the way of the Quran. Can't give you any better answer than that. So Fatiha to begin with. Introduce God through the help of the attributes with which Surah Fatiha begins and introduces God. And on that I have said so many times, so much, that I wonder if I could repeat all that here. It's not possible anyway, because I've spoken for hours upon hours. See?
Okay.
So better have access to those videos which are available here, and inshallah then listening carefully to them, you'll be well equipped to answer such friends. Please.
Kalim Edwards.
Yes.
Of course. Well, I don't know, of course, but that's my name, full stop. Now, a question I've got is that the millennium approaches. Now, obviously, there's a millennium for the Western world who use the Western calendar, but it could pose problems for. I mean, one of the prophecies that may happen in the near future is like a financial crisis or some sort of crisis using computers. Because a lot of the computers are based from the 70s and 80s, that they don't recognise the year 2000. They think when the 1st of 2000, the computers all think it's 1900. So there's real problems at the moment that computers may all crash. Financial systems around the world might there might be real problems. Have you think of any prophecies that may
I think
of this?
This question is not a genuine question. It's a hypothetical question.
Yeah.
Because in reality, the millenniums have nothing to do with the progress of man.
Right.
It's a continuous process. It is not evenly spread out throughout the world. And to call it a new millennium for the whole mankind is basically wrong. Because there will be parts of Africa, even in Sierra Leone, where people still live 2,000 years before. See? And there are parts who live 1,000 years before, 100 years before, and so on and so forth. There are many Muslim countries who are living in the age which was the age of Ferdinand and Isabella in Spain. So it's all a false image created by man himself.
Right.
And he has fallen dupe to his own creation. Fallen prey to his own creation.
Yeah.
One should continue to work. That's all.
Okay. I mean, I just wonder if there was any significance of.
Well, significance, of course, there is, because the Holy Quran also divides ages in years, thousands of years, and so on and so forth. But I'm not taking this issue up from that point of view.
Right.
I'm just speaking of the present day, attitude to the new year, new millennium about to be born.
Right.
And to celebrate it. From that point of view, I'm saying that it's just useless and meaningless, because this new millennium is not going to change anything for them.
Right.
When the Holy Quran speaks of millenniums, It speaks in a completely different connotation altogether. It speaks of big physical changes brought about in the world in a period of 1,000 years and such repeated periods. It speaks of religious changes in not only, I think I have started wrongly. The millennium understood from the point of view of religious history, as I understand from the Quran, speaks of the completion of a period of one age.
Right.
From the point of view of religious development and the perfection of a progressive thought into its final culmination, and passing of one religious era into another, and passing of one religious era and beginning of another, and so on and so forth. So this is a very different subject altogether.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Please.
Bakri Kalon.
Yes?
What I'd like to know is the institution of Khilafat in Ahmadiyya, do you think it will remain forever, or do you envisage a time where...
Is there anything forever except God?
No, but according to some prophecies...
You see, life is not forever. You are not forever, I am not forever. But it does not mean that we must not, or we may not make any genuine effort to be forever. They're two different things. Every human knows that he is not eternal, yet he plans as if he would remain forever. Yet he makes every effort to be personally internalized, because he lives with the hope of going on and on and on with life and with his youth, with his strength, with his health, with mental and faculties and the faculties of heart. He wants to keep them intact and go on and on and on. So all the efforts which he makes are not dampened because he knows he is not eternal. He must die. Exactly the same is the attitude which should be borne by Ahmadis towards Khilafat. The conviction that previous religions came to be born, they rose to certain heights, they declined and were ultimately destroyed or finished. Such convictions should not deter us from making every possible effort to keep the institution of Khilafat healthy. Leave the rest to God. Got it?
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
This time when we are discussing with our Christian friends about the questions of whether Jesus Christ died on the cross or not, we present the argument about blood and water. But they counter with the fact that after...
Well, what argument do you produce?
About the blood and water still flowing from the body of...
It's a very small part of the argument.
It is very small part. But they counteract with they say that blood does not clot immediately on death. What is your view about this?
What is the medical view?
No, well, your personal view.
No, why should there be a personal view at all?
Of course, medical.
It's a medical question. You should inquire from the doctors what the medical view is. And such a view of an authority has already been published in our report of that conference in 78.
Yes.
Huh? Yes. What was it called?
Deliverance from the cross.
Deliverance from the cross. So a medical authority of England who spoke on the subject he knew so well has given his verdict in the favor of the fact that once man dies, his blood coagulates. But what sometimes flows is not the normal blood, it is the poison blood. For instance, if somebody is bitten by a snake, then immediately after death his blood would not coagulate in the right way. So what would happen? A blackish liquid, thick liquid, will continue to, to flow from not only from the wounds which are inflicted, but from all the orifices, from the noses, from the mouth, from everything else, which you can call an orifice. So that is a different state altogether. Jesus Christ was not a diseased person. He was a healthy man, and a very tough man for that matter, because he was very austere of his habits. So as such, his death should have followed the normal pattern of healthy human beings. And when somebody dies, if you give a cut, blood will not flow. What would flow may be, it will flow, the plasma may flow, but not blood. People ordinarily are confused about what they see flowing out of a dead body. What flows is the plasma, not blood. Once you slaughter an animal, as long as the blood flows, there is still life. But when it settles down to death, then blood cannot flow. When you cut the flesh of a dead animal, the thing which flows is not complete blood. It's either plasma or some deformed blood which is trapped in some places, some cavities. But we are talking of a very different experience, which in case of Jesus. When Jesus was taken down from cross, that between that time and his being removed to the sepulchre, there are many witnesses who reported about different phases of this period. Number one, when his side was pierced while he was still hanging, blood and water gushed out. This is the statement of the observers. This is authentic biblical account. Blood and water. Now, if it was just watery blood, it will not be described as blood and water. Why water? Because of pleurisy. And this medical authority I just referred to has mentioned this. And he, with the help of diagrams, he explains that a man hanging from the cross like this is likely to suffer from wet pleurisy, filling the pleura with some liquid, watery liquid, and when somebody would attempt to pierce the heart from the side, that pleura would intervene and it would take the main impact on itself. The purpose of piercing was to damage the heart, to pierce the heart. But if somebody is suffering from that pleurisy, then it would be in the way, with the result that when this sac is pierced, out of that water will flow, and because of the injury caused to the flesh, before it reaches that pleura, the blood will also flow. But heart will remain undamaged. It all depends on the nature of the thrust, the intention of the person who does it, and the distance to which it is carried. In case of Jesus Christ, because blood and water separately flowed, they had their own independent identities. So we argue from that he must be alive at the time when this happened. To make the death of such a person certain, they took the additional care of breaking his legs. In case of the two thieves, their legs were broken. In case of Jesus Christ, the legs were not broken. But more evidence is yet to come, which is the clinching evidence. There are possibilities, of course. I don't rule out the possibility of blood and water flowing out, because they may not have immediately clotted into, what they call, into a state of solidity. It all depends on when he was pierced. But if he were dead, then why ointments were applied to his wounds? That is the more important question, which develops the argument further and carries it to its conclusion. St. John is the one who reported it, but at the same time, he said, others who reported it did not say this, but St. John had this doubt about why ointment at all. So he suggested that this was done because it was a Jewish custom to anoint the bodies of the dead people or the ones who have died of injuries or this and that. No, he doesn't say that injury part. What he simply states is it was a Jewish custom to anoint the corpses of their dead. Now, it was this statement of St. John which exposed him to be a non-Jewish person. So, the present scholars who blame him for being a non-Jewish in origin and claim to be as if he belonged to the same stock, quote this. They say it's absolutely false. It was not a Jewish custom to anoint the dead bodies. So why did he say it? He was not Jewish anyway, but he must have suspected that if Christ was dead, why to go through the botheration of preparing an ointment, 12 apostles participating in that, and then rushing the ointment to him and anointing his body with that. It was a genuine, question raised in his mind, challenging the authenticity of the report that he was dead. So he made up the story. But the same story revealed him to be wrong as well as Jesus to be alive. See? Then he was seen about 3 days or less than that, alive, walking away from his sepulchre where he was kept and holding, putting his hand on the shoulders of 2 persons who were helping him across. He was an injured person. He was very weak. He wanted that support. And when he's seen alive by some of his disciples, they suspect him to be the ghost. Why the ghost? Because there is a statement in the Bible that then he gave up the ghost. So, if that was the report in circulation, that then he gave up the ghost, then they must have been afraid. It was quite natural for them to suspect him to be a ghost, not a living person. Now, Jesus gave a lie to that report when he said, "No, I am not a ghost," which means he never gave up the ghost. And he said, "I am the same person, same Jesus who was crucified, bearing the same wounds. Come and see and touch." Now, if this happens today, and the case is presented to a court of law, for the judges to decide whether this person has risen from the dead or did not die at all, what would be the verdict? Anywhere in the world, without exception, every court of law would would positively declare the person to have escaped death, not to have revived from the dead. Right or wrong? See? So why a different judgment is passed by the Christians of that of which they have no right, no justification whatsoever? So build the case completely, carrying it from A to Z, and then there is no room for escape for those who willfully would have him alive instead of dead. Right?
A quick question on that,
Uh-huh.
coming to that.
Yes.
Exhibit A, the Turin Shroud, was in a fire in the church just recently and
Yes,
survived.
That's right.
I mean, do you...
You see, this is the greatest dilemma for the Christian church which they are facing today. Most of the authorities know deep inside their hearts that this is a genuine cloth, the cloth with which Jesus' body was enwrapped. At the same time, the story it tells falsifies the doctrine of Christianity. So this is the dilemma. They can neither swallow nor ogle it out. They are tenaciously, holding on to that shroud as a holy thing. Yet when it comes to the story it tells, they try their best to obscure the message and through hooks and crooks, sometimes with leak with the scientists of the highest class and category. They manipulate things in a manner that people are left in doubt about what it was actually. And the scientists who are in league with them are not honest, because some other honest scientists have challenged them and questioned their integrity. Say, why are you mumbling and why are you chewing words about it? Why don't you make a clear statement that this is the case and that is not? In the end, they draw the conclusion that scientifically it cannot be certainly said that it was Jesus whose body was enwrapped in this cloth. Who says that a scientist can declare that judgment? He cannot. It's not the issue at all. The issue is, if it was Jesus, then what is the story which that cloth tells? What is the image? How it came to be there? And could it be a fraud committed upon the unsuspecting people by an extremely clever, fraudulent person in the 12th century, 13th century? Because those who reject it as a genuine cloth, they have some questions to answer. All right, if it was not genuine, when was it first created? The earliest they can claim is 12th century, or perhaps 13th century, 1200 some. Now the question is, the camera was not as yet invented at that time. The concept of images and negative images was as yet not born. So who could be that artist who prepared that fake in negative instead of creating a positive out of it? Instead of faking a positive, why should he have faked a negative? And some experts in photography have challenged, without having received any answer so far, any artist to create a negative when exposed and a film prepared out of that, the prints taken out of that, would create the exact image of a person in the right proportions. It's a very challenging thing. Even an artist with great capabilities and expertise would not be able to create exact negative of an image which he wants to portray. But when there is no idea of negatives born at all, what was the purpose of that artist? Whom was he befooling? Why create a negative at all? At best, he was not befooling the people of his own time, he was befooling the people of the 20th century. They would understand what he had done. It's all absolutely, this argumentation on their part has no legs to stand upon. Absolutely none. Now, if they do not see any, if they can not envision any other natural way which could have created that image, this failure does not mean that this figure does not exist. If they cannot envision any natural way of creating that image without a camera, without a willful artistic effort, they have still no right to deny the existence of the image and accept its tale, accept the story it tells. So this is how, they deceive people. They say, no, some people suggest it could have happened this way, could have happened that way, and we have investigated and it's not possible. Okay, not possible, but what is this cloth? If it is impossibility, you have to accept the impossibility of its existence to have become possible. This is what they do not draw. This is not the conclusion which they draw. Once faced with the reality of the cloth, they must try to read its message. And when they read the message, then the message is most certainly this, that whoever was wrapped in this cloth was alive when taken down from cross, and the image which appeared on the cloth was that of a man who was still breathing, that of a man whose blood was still in circulation. Right? All that, the research work which they publish in the name of Nassau experts and this and that, is all just a corrupt attempt to mislead the people, covered under scientific jargon, like scientifically we have not become sure, we're not sure that this is the man Jesus. How could they be? But scientifically they are certain that the image on that cloth answers perfectly to the image of Jesus who was crucified. It answers perfectly to the image of a person who was lashed in the back and there were marks of that lashing. This image answers perfectly to the image of a person who before crucifixion, the crown was put over his head.
Stones.
Crown of thorns. Yes, crown of thorns was put over his head. And you see the pricks. And a person whose palm was pierced and not the wrist as erroneously it was felt. Now, these are very strange things which I am talking about. For a man of the 12th century to know, all the consensus at that time as to how Jesus was crucified was united on the belief that his wrist was pierced. Researchers after that disclosed that it was the palm which was pierced. And the image maker makes the image of the palm, not of the wrist. And the thorns and everything. So if not Jesus produced the other man from history of the 12th century, for instance, who was the person or possible suspect in the 12th century who could have been crucified like this. And what methodology did nature choose, if it is impossible for the nature to create a negative image by itself, to preserve the image of that fake person who is not Jesus Christ? Absurdity upon absurdity. Absolutely, they can't wriggle out of it honestly. So they try, deceitful means to do that. That's not all there is to it. I can tell you so many other things which make it impossible for anything other than the fact, other than the belief. Still, it's not a fact, we can say, belief, that to our knowledge, there was no person in history who could answer this description, whose body should have been so carefully preserved and enwrapped. Ointment should have been applied to his body as well. And yet God saw to it that that cloth was preserved. But according to the Christian, God saw to it that his cloth was preserved in the wrong place, telling the story of a wrong person. What absurdity in this view too. I mean, absolutely, there should be some limit to belief in hocus pocus and nonsense. Right?
Yes.
So understand the whole case and build it like this, and then you'll see nobody can escape genuinely unless he is a willful fraud or is bent upon being adamant on whatever he believes in. If you present it in the right way, it's impossible for a normal person to avoid the only conclusion. It had to be Jesus, and he was alive when he was raped.
Do you think it's strange that the fire happened just recently and they managed to save the Turin Shroud? I mean, it's like God's will that they're going to keep it and to hopefully prove it?
This fire happened twice before, and still it was not permitted by God to destroy the cloth. That's what I referred to briefly, that also they have to accept that God became a party to this fraud. He kept on miraculously saving this cloth, preserving it for the 20th century, who could read the message. Against all hazards, against all accidents.
We'll make it Exhibit A in this hypothetical case. We should put the case to them and call the Turin Shroud Exhibit A.
Yes, exactly.
Because it survived. They've tried to break the evidence,
That's right.
or
Well, simply cannot.
All right, I got a second question.
The public is confused
yeah.
because the way they cheat them, the public cannot detect what's happening to them. They are just, the object of a willful, organized, worldwide propaganda. And the public in the West, although very intelligent, highly educated, is always made a fool of by the organized propagandists. In every case. In case of Gulf crisis, in case of the help the British gave to the Iraqis and concealed it at the time. History goes on revealing willful efforts of the Western leadership to keep their public befooled. So they're getting accustomed to it now. They present the case in a manner that they think, yes, nothing is sure, nothing is certain. And they leave out those, parts of the evidence which, if highlighted, would shake the building of Christianity, the edifice of Christianity out of foundation.
What I'd like to know is, can anything happen in the universe against the laws of nature?
Huh?
Can anything happen in the universe against the laws of nature?
Can anything happen in the universe against the will of God?
No.
What is the law of nature? Does it exist independently of God? So you have already answered your question.
All right, well, can I just ask another question following from this? Sometimes we read in the hadith that the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, had like a glass of milk and he passed it around to like many of his companions, and all of them drank, and there was still enough for him to drink. How did that happen?
But first of all, you must withdraw that question.
All right.
Nothing can happen against the will of God.
I understand that.
But when God wills, it becomes nature. It's not against nature. Moreover, God can employ some natural laws which are not known to that generation who observed or viewed those miracles. They become known as laws of nature later on in different eras. That's one possibility. The creation of something which did not have any the components created before this combination is become possible now with the research of the physics advancing in that direction. They say they have observed, in fact, the creation of things out of nothing. And when something is born as a positive pole, its opposite is automatically born. So it's a very complicated description which requires further explanation. So I leave that, but I assure you that the scientists have now accepted the possibility of creation out of nothing. So much so that they have developed a theory of neutrinos and antineutrinos, positrons and antipositrons, neutrons and antineutrons, and so on and so forth, in a manner as though the entire universe is zero.
Antimatter and matter.
Yeah, that's right, yes. Antimatter, if it is exactly equal in its mass to that of the matter, then if brought together, the result would be zero. So if somehow you could split zero into a positive pole and a negative pole, you would be able to create. Now, this is very complex. That's why I say it's very complex. But they know it. They know it has happened. So that is God. You can't understand because you cannot understand the nature of God. That is why the Holy Quran repeatedly says there is nothing like Him. Don't even try to understand Him in, what He's made of, what He is. Because you always understand things by the likeness they carry to something else you know. If there is no likeness, you say, no, we can't believe. Nothing like this has ever happened, This is a common argument. So nothing like God has ever happened. How could you can understand those things which lie beyond the age of your own creation? When you were non-existent and things existed other than you, when the universe was non-existent, yet its seed was there somehow, because out of nothing, according to their own formula, nothing could have been born.
Yeah.
So, by powerful argument, the Holy Quran dispels all doubts as to the existence of God, yet challenges man that he will never be able to conceive the true nature of God. So how he splits nothingness into things, that we do not know. But we know that he does.
Right.
See?
Yeah. How else are we on this earth?
Yes. Next, please. Mauritius. Back to Mauritius as well.
There seems to be a tradition among Muslims and Ahmadis also that on the day of Eid al-Azha, we fast in the morning from Fajr up till the time of sacrifice. What is the origin of this fasting, and is there any hard and fast rules about that?
Why have you become so interested in the origin of fasting? Tell me. How could it help you in any way?
No, I'm just curious about this particular custom. I know about fasting, that fasting has been...
Why fast at all when you have food available? This is the question. Unless told by God, unless you have belief that God is the creator of all provisions, and to testify to the truth of your belief, that you genuinely believe him to be the ultimate proprietor of everything. When he says don't do it, you stop. Even a dog cannot eat without your permission. If he is a trained dog in the house, he can see bread in your hand, but he would not jump to it if he is a trained dog. And most dogs do that. They wait till it is thrown to them. So this is the message which is inculcated in life. But humans, unfortunately, tend to forget it. So they are reminded that whatever you have is created by God, and it is through His permission that you are entitled to utilize it. Otherwise, it's just like a theft. To send this message home, the institution of keeping fasts is universally found in every religion. Now that again is not accidental, could not have been accidental. They differ in so many things, but there is no religion without the element of fasting, the institution of fasting. Now the ways differ, but the fasting is there. Now when you inquire about why in Islam is from this time to that time, how can I answer that why? Because I know that God has been describing the manner of fasting differently to different people at different ages. But of fasting, He was consistent that you must fast. See? So the reason why He did it differently must have been related to the age of the people, their development, their manner, their behavior, and so on and so forth. And there are so many unknown factors to us that we cannot pinpoint the reason why that religion was granted this permission in that way and this religion was granted in this way. This is a subject beyond our comprehension, not comprehension, but beyond our scope of gathering the necessary facts to determine why. Right? But one thing is certain, that in Islam it is the severest fasting as compared to many other religions. But also in Islam it is the mildest fasting as compared to some other religions. Because in some civilized religions, civilized in the sense that their culture, everything is well preserved, and we know that this is how God ordained things to them. We know that fasting is made easier. You may not eat cooked things, but you can have fruits and things and so on. You can drink water. But in some other religions whose origin has become a bit foggy, like Hinduism, you have fasting up to 30 days, for instance, and they claim it is possible. Some yogis claim to be on fast, not only abstaining from eating, they abstain from drinking, they say for many months. That also is a religious origin. But they also claim that they hold their breath, and sometimes they do not take the second breath until a month or so later. Some yogis are told to have gone into the, and disappeared into the stream and remained there for months apart, months and months together, and come out alive at the other end when they were considered to have been gone and finished. So these are claims by different religions. Islam does not go to the extremities on either side. It does not make it either too easy so that the message is taken lightly, or too difficult for the life to be sustained. See? But also at the same time, I'm quite sure that among the well-established world religions, Islamic fasting is the severest. Because I think Islam was to share an age where there were to be large areas of humanity suffering from the basic requirements of food and dying of hunger and this and that. To create sensibility to their suffering, fasting had to be severe enough to punish you and to let you realize what hunger is, how painful it becomes, despite the fact that you can't describe it as any pain. Hunger is not a pain. Yet it is so intolerable times to bear, and the suffering is writ large on your body, on your skeleton, on your mummy-like figures, and so on and so forth. So to create this world consciousness was essential for a global religion, so that when you suffer, you just not only think of your own children suffering from the possibility of hunger, but globally you become conscious of hunger as such and try to do as best as you can to remove hunger from the world, from the earth, right? So I think that could be the reason why Islam appears to be rather severe on Muslims for keeping fasts. Okay? Okay. Please.
A question was asked to me about evolution. Is man still passing through some sort of physical and spiritual evolution?
Everything which comes into being is immediately pushed forward to an unlimited motion which spirals upwards. And sometimes it's reversed. But there is no period which is stationary. Either it must move on and on to higher achievements, or it must continue to lose whatever it had achieved. Either you can rise in the heights or fall into the depths. There's no third thing. You can't hang in the air, suspended. So such exactly is the case of humankind. They have put on the way to evolution, and unless we know definitely that this evolutionary process has been obstructed by God, how can we conceive it had to be finished by itself? This is against the law of inertia. You see, same applies to evolution. There have to be some factors blocking the passage of an evolving species for it to stop evolving. Otherwise it will continue. So we don't know as yet whether the animals we think have stopped evolving have actually stopped or not, because we keep on observing virus evolving continuously. So maybe because the process is so slow, it's impossible for you to visualize the changes which are slowly brought about by evolution that you do not observe. But maybe the species we think have come to stay are still in a constant state of gradual change, and they may break into the previous species which were born out of them, or new species altogether. But the scale of time is so large that according to the scientists, it took 1 billion years for life to evolve through all the different life species to the stage of man. But they don't present this to be an enormous figure. They say it is impossibly short. For evolution, as understood by the secular people, the normal course it should have taken should have been maybe 1,000 times, now let me quote in the figures, maybe 1,000 raised to the power of 1,000 times more than what it is. Because of one thing I'm sure, because a scientist of great renown and reliability and respect has calculated the time it should take for the initial DNA to be created by chances on the principle of evolution. He says that just the creation of the first cell of life, it should have taken 249, 10 raised to the power of 249. You know mathematics?
Yeah, billions 10 to the 9, isn't it?
No, it's more than that.
No, it's far, far more.
It's really 10 followed by 249
But-
nodes.
No, I'm just saying that the billion that you were saying, that the scientists say it's a billion. 10 to the 9.
Yes.
And this is 25 times that.
No, far more, far greater. You don't know.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
I tell you. A billion years have 9 zeros.
9 zeros, that's right, yeah.
So a billion times billion is 18 zeros. A billion times that figure is 24 zeros.
It's a factor of 24 higher than
Yes.
the figure.
24 zeros. But the figure which I'm telling you is, it has 249 zeros.
Exactly.
So billions are less than pygmies as compared.
Just for one
The
second.
billion are less than a dot to 1,000 miles. So this scientist has calculated and he has not been challenged.
Is that Fred Hoyle?
No. Fred Hoyle is challenged on many counts by others because he is overmuch theorizer. But this scientist I am telling you about is just a cool mathematician. He says according to the principle of large numbers and how they interplay with each other and so on, and the factors which are necessary to be in the right places for creating a single character in life, and for that character to be accumulated to a degree, to know in the volume enough to create a new species. He says if you take these factors into view mathematically, purely mathematically, the life beginning from as we know it began with should have resulted in the creation of man after a period of 10 raised to the power of 249. It's an eternally long period.
Much longer than the age of the universe, probably.
But
Much longer than the age of the
no
universe.
question.
Yes.
They say 14 billion, don't they? for the
No,
universe?
20 at most. The 20 billion years age of the universe is less than the age of the fertilized egg of a human as compared to his whole life. Much less. So only those can understand who have some idea of what mathematical figures mean. So, but anyway, for the common people who are not well versed in these figures and mathematics, etc., I must tell them that evolution is that slow a process as has been mathematically described by the scientists. So the miracle is how it could be squeezed into this time. They avoid this answer willfully, like they avoid the answers to the question raised with relation to the Turin shroud. Because if they confront this question, they have to admit that it is a guided evidence and there has to be a superhuman being who was conscious, who was living, who had the knowledge of everything. He guided evolution at every step to shorten the time, because then of course it would be squeezed into that 1 billion years. But if at every step there is a possibility of 100,000 steps in the wrong direction, then each step between the beginning and the end has to be multiplied at every such occasion to hundreds of thousands of possibilities going in the wrong direction, and wait until after those hundreds of thousands of possibilities one step is taken by mistake in the right direction. And for that step to be followed by a right step is again impossible, naturally, or the possibility, as the only possibility is not acceptable. So it is quite likely that the more passage of time there is, the steps which were taken in the right direction would also be destroyed, because the next step in the wrong direction would do away with all the achievements of the previous evolution. So multiply that time with that time, and then wait for that remote chance that the second step is also in the right direction. That is how I am trying to make you understand the impossibility possibly long period which has to be involved in blind evolution. But in the guided evolution, it's so easy to understand. Evolution it is. But somebody is guiding the step of life every time it takes a step forward. Not in this direction, not in that. This is the place. And so on and so forth, until in a billion years life reaches its summit, which is mankind. Summit so far, as we know. Right? Finished? 1 minute left only.
1 minute. Time for a quick question.
Several quick questions.
Just one quick question.
Okay. In 1 minute.
Yeah, I just want to know, why is it forbidden to recite verses of the Holy Quran during prostration?
Pardon?
Why is it forbidden to recite verses of the Quran while in prostration, while in sajda?
I don't know. Why? Because until I learned from Ahmad Sallallahu that it was not right to recite the Quran during prostration, I thought there should be no objection. My father, late father, who was Muslim, was also thought that until he learned that hadith. So, but deep within, despite the fact that I thought there was no objection, I had a feeling that the recitation of the Quran as such required a different posture. It's extolling the name of God is all right. It can be done in any posture. But to recite the Quran requires more formality and, a sort of a more respectable state or position. So it's not, it's possible that this may not be right, this suggestion. But this is the only suggestion which I can think of. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.